only reason you are able to command a premium for your product is because there are certain legal protections.
Having great love for science and mathematics at your heart, how did you end up in law?
75 people who graduate from National Law School every year, and there are about 4,000 people who graduate from IITs. So why not I be a part of a smaller crowd? The first thing I learned is not to try to be the smartest person in the room. I walked into my partner's cabin at 2:30 in the morning and I said, sir, ye kaam ho gaya, next kya karna hai? And he looked up at me and he said, you want to go home early, that's why you're asking me. I'm not getting my youth back. Take half the money, but let me live my life. There are not too many people who are in a position to make that decision. Titles come and go. A career is really long. It's the network, it's the relationships, it's the depth that you build. Try to build those relationships that matter.
Anirudh, hi, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Hey, good afternoon, Prayank. I'm doing fine, and thanks for having me on the show.
My pleasure, Anirudh, my pleasure. So, just before we begin, you said you were continuously thinking about today's podcast. So, what were those thoughts? If we can start, let's start by understanding what were these thoughts and what are you actually, what were you going throughout the day before coming for this podcast itself?
That's it's an interesting observation that this is going to be my first public speaking, in the digital media space. So, I've addressed conferences, I've addressed people in live audiences before, but never across a technology platform, and where it's getting recorded on the on the webcam, so to speak. So it's just me thinking, this is probably the difference between a stage actor and a cine actor,
Uh-huh.
where the things you speak about and the way you deliver, the amount of self-consciousness that you have is different. So it's purely from that performance perspective that I was thinking about it. Yeah, of course, I was also, going through what I might speak about, just thinking back upon my career, thinking about my current role as well, and kind of giving myself a mental framework for speaking with you today.
Hmm. Oh, lovely. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, it does feel different. Sometimes more refreshing itself, I would say. I mean, I've spoken to more than 100 plus general counsels in the last 6 months. And one thing has been common is people always take this moment and then they reflect back on their journey. And I think that has been one of the very good observation, and that has been like common pattern amongst everybody's story as well. So I would like to start our discussion as well with that point of reflection. So under if you can explain us your life, your journey in four major parts. One would be your childhood days, first 10 years. Second would be 20 years, because I think that's the age gap or like age bracket in which actually shapes the career. And then 20 to 40, and then 40 and beyond. So if you can explain your life in these four segments, it would really help us understand deeply about you, and people would love to know who you are.
Sure. The first 10 years probably, I was born in Chennai. I grew up for my first 10 years in Chennai, and I was always this shy and nerdy kind of kid, somebody that picked up the English language quickly, somebody that picked up basic math concepts quickly, but couldn't do any of these physical activities like, running a race or running with a lemon in my mouth and, stuff like that. Also, Tamil is not my native language.
Mhm.
So it was initially a bit of a challenge to, speak with people around me. But, these proved to be some of my best learning blocks. Learning the language, learning to, mingle with people who have more diverse interests than just, being stuck in books and trying to understand things through a very intellectual perspective. And then I moved to Bangalore, and Bangalore is culturally very different from Chennai in so many different ways. So, my entire middle and high school days have been in Bangalore. I was lucky enough to attend law school in Bangalore as well. And most of my career, because I've chosen tech and tech has a very big presence in Bangalore, I've been here for the rest of my life since then, except for, brief professional stints in Delhi. Uh, so that way, I really adapted to Bangalore culture so much better. For starters, it was more cosmopolitan. So and cosmopolitan not only in terms of language but also the backgrounds of the people who were around me in the school. Starting from people from affluent business families to middle class, uh, you know, working families like I was from, and people lesser than that as well. So it was a big mix, and that also was a major learning opportunity for me. But it's when I joined law school that all of it suddenly exploded.
Mhm.
It's like there are 50, 60 others in my batch who are who have achieved as much as I have, or who are as intelligent as I am, if not much better. And everybody is there with so much of exposure to so many different things. And honestly, first 1 year at law school was a big shock for me. I probably went into my shell, probably didn't interact too much with others, you know, carried this reputation of being a nerd and not in a nice way. I'd be stuck in the library just because I didn't want to face others.
Okay.
But then I discovered activities like debates, moot courts,
Mhm.
which automatically made me team up with people, which put me on a public speaking stage, and that's where I started finding my feet and expressing myself better. So I'm not exactly stuck to your 10 to 20, 0 to 10, but this is broadly been the progression from and when I was in the fifth year of my law school, I had the opportunity to do an internship with Infosys in their elite team, and that really got me hooked onto tech. Even prior to that, before joining law school, I had a stellar academic record in math and science subjects. Everybody expected me to become an engineer. I wrote the IIT screening test. I was supposed to write the IIT main. So you know getting into law school itself was a bit of a surprise, but somewhere in the back of my mind, it was always there that, somewhere I'm good at math, somewhere I'm good at science, I should be good at tech. So, being in Infosys was sort of a dream come true, so to speak. Back in the early 2000s, Infosys was this company which gave ESOPs to employees, which sent people to, US and Germany and all those exciting places. Engineers, of course, not lawyers. We are still bound by jurisdictions. Um, but that's the popular mythical legends that you've heard about companies like Infosys and TCS. And I thought, yeah, I'm happy to be here. But having joined Infosys as an intern and done spent 3 consecutive vacations or
Mhm.
college breaks doing internships there. Uh, Very surprisingly, I took up a job in a law firm in Delhi, and it was culturally, it was in terms of people, in terms of what is expected, so wildly different between a top corporate law firm and a tech company. I'm not saying that a tech company is a piece of cake and you can just turn up in rangeen kapde and
Mhm.
do whatever you want, but just in terms of work culture, I don't want to say anything too bad about law firms, of course, but there is a clear difference between how a tech company would operate and how a law firm would operate. I still remember this incident where I walked into my partner's chamber
Mhm.
cabin at 2:30 in the morning, and I said, "Sir, ye kaam ho gaya. Next kya karna hai?" And he looked up at me and he said, "You want to go home early. That's why you're asking me." And that was the day I decided that I'm just 23 years old,
Yeah.
and I don't want to be spending the next 8, 10 years of my youth staying back in office for 80 plus hours in a week. There are more efficient ways of learning. There are
Right.
better ways of becoming a better professional, to achieve success in my career and actually do something that I like. There are people who enjoy working 80 hours a week. I'm not one of them. So that's when I came back to tech. And that's like, barely when I was 23, I made that choice to take uh, a 50% pay cut and move into the tech industry as an in-house lawyer. And that's where I've been. And my entire journey from that age of 23 to 40 was about discovering, uh, being an in-house counsel in the tech industry, evolving, getting deeper in, and slowly moving into a strategic role. And that's the work that I've been doing. That's been the focus of my life, in terms of my professional life for the last maybe 7 to 10 years, which is to understand what it takes to be a successful leader. Because being a lead counsel or a general counsel is not just about getting the law absolutely right. It's about being an effective business leader, and that's something that I have focused on. And that extends into the non office part of my life as well. How do I build networks better? How do I build relationships better? How do I anticipate different outcomes? And that's how my growth has been over the last few years.
Very good. Interesting. Beautiful way to sum up your journey, Anirudh. Thank you so much for sharing that. I would love to understand, since you have been having great love for science and mathematics at your heart. How did you end up in law? Tell us more about that. Like, what happened? How did law happen to you?
you know uh, there is a saying that logic is about half of what law is.
Yeah.
Uh, and and logic is very mathematical and scientific at its heart. I was always good at critical reasoning. I was always good at identifying little loopholes in what people were saying, trying to just understanding structures in what was being taught, what was being spoken, what was being discussed around me. And like I said, language has been a strength of mine. And to be a successful lawyer, you need to have really good understanding of language, because that's how you communicate, that's how you get all your rights and obligations across, right? So that's one of the reasons I uh, wanted to move towards something slightly different. It was a courageous or a foolish decision when I made it to not attend the IIT main exam, or which was on the same day as the law school entrance. And I thought to myself, there are 70, 75 people who graduate from National Law School every year. And there are about 4,000 people who graduate from IITs. So why not I be a part of a smaller crowd?
Nice.
It's a subject that I have absolutely no idea about, but I understand that these are the fundamentals, in terms of critical thinking, logical reasoning, having good understanding of the language, good general knowledge, all of those things. And I thought it's not something where I have to, paint pictures or, amputate something from someone or do surgeries. Those are things I'm definitely not good at.
Mhm.
This is something I can be good at, I can be even better at. And in hindsight, that courageous move has been the right move.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So okay, law school happened to you. Then an interesting time came when you were at the age of 23 and you decided, okay, uh, law firm is not something which where you want to actually end up working and spending your youth. So you decided to move in house. Now, during your journey, you mentioned that when law school happened to you, you went into a shell, right? Now, from that guy or a kid who was in the shell to now being answerable to everybody in the tech company, because in-house counsels are a rare breed, right? You would have handful of people, sometimes even one person as well in the legal team at a tech company, and everybody is looking up to you for all the right answers. Whether you know it or not, they don't care. They'll just look up to you and say, you know what, Aniruddha, you will take care of it. You are my man. So, how did that transition happen from the shy guy who was in the shell when he went to the law school versus being an in-house counsel at a tech company and being answerable to everybody, being somebody who everyone is looking up to. How did that transition happen, and what all does it take to be that guy?
The first thing I learned is not to try to be the smartest person in the room.
Okay.
It's a very natural instinct. People who get into law school, they have almost all been high achievers,
Mm.
right? And when they get into a room full of other high achievers, there's always going to be a smarter voice, there's always going to be a louder voice, and sometimes that can be demotivating. And it's not just the loudest or the smartest voice. There are people who have been exposed to so much. There were people in my class who had done exchange programs abroad while in high school, and uh kind of exposure that I cannot wish upon myself, right? I can't just turn up and say, okay, I can be a part of that. So the most important thing is to stop trying to compete, right? You're not competing against people for their backgrounds, you're not competing against people for how smart they sound when they speak. I
Mm.
think what you're trying to compete, if at all, is to find your own place, find your own niche, have your own expressions. It took me a while to understand that. So, probably by the time I was in my third or fourth year, I had become more comfortable with myself, with being a part of that group. And I understood that I have certain quiet leadership qualities because I don't really need to shout from from the rooftops or pick up a mic and yell at people in the room to be an effective leader. The kind of points I used to make during moot court competitions, during debates, during any of our class discussions, it just went to show me that I am capable of providing a different perspective. I'm capable of bringing something new into the room, and that's something that really acted as a self motivator for me. And those are the things that I used when I got into the profession as well, got into Infosys and all the other later companies as part of my career. Uh, I could understand products. I thought back to my math and science days from school, and I thought, these are things that I can understand. If somebody is using technical language, I am probably better than most of the other people in my class, most other lawyers around me at this age to understand these things. So I stopped trying to be the smartest guy in the room, and I moved towards trying to be the smartest that I can be. And the smartest that I can be may or may not be the smartest in the room, but it's smarter than a lot of people around in a lot of different ways. And today when people come to ask me for counsel, I don't need to provide 100% legal black and white answer. I really don't need to give anybody a treatise on contract law or on IP law. I need to provide business solutions. For that, I need to understand the business. I need to have a good working relationship with the people around me. And these are skills that I started developing when I was in law school. I started again developing, in a much broader way when I joined the industry. And that's something that I have been sharpening all along.
Interesting. Very good point. So, in a way, you basically identified your own niche and you became expert in that niche, so that you don't need to compete with the smartest person in the room because you are the smartest in your own niche.
Correct. Absolutely right. And I need that other smartest person in the room. There might be a genius engineer in the room. There might
Right.
be a genius financial wizard in the room. It takes all of these people to come together. Just like in law school, if I'm working as part of a moot team, there has to be somebody who's this bombastic speaker, even though he may not have the best content. There
Mm.
has to be this person who's, really the quiet person, but extremely thorough as a researcher. You need those personalities to come together. And I don't need to compete with them. I don't need to prove that I'm better than them. But I need to find a way to work with them and get the best out of them. And that's something that I'm good at.
Interesting. So, one of the beautiful word which you mentioned initially was your evolution as a lawyer, as an in-house counsel lawyer. I would like you to describe this and break it down so that people can understand How does an in-house counsel lawyer evolve in their lives, in their careers?
Absolutely. And this is interestingly one of the things that I was thinking about this morning, right? How do I look back upon this journey? I've spent an entire career as an in-house lawyer in the tech sector. And in many ways, this journey has been about understanding how me or as a lawyer or my legal advice can genuinely enable business. It's
Mhm,
not just about protecting it, it's about enabling it. When I started off, of course, I was all starry eyed when I joined Infosys. But then I moved roles fairly quickly back then. Like many young professionals,
mhm,
I was drawn by the lure of better titles, maybe better salary, the appeal of better brand names on my CV. These are things that a lot of young professionals also get drawn into.
mhm,
These did give me exposure to different organizations, to different cultures. Infosys was an Indian headquartered company. Cisco is a US headquartered company. SAP is a German company. It gave me exposure to different organizations, different cultures. But I realized that what I require to move forward is depth, right? One is breadth. I've got to see so many different things, and then there is depth. And that began to take shape when I joined SAP,
okay.
where I worked as a senior transactional lawyer. That was the first time I had senior attached to my title. That was like a very exciting thing in itself. But that also threw me in the deep end, right? Because I'd not really spent so much time in understanding the product, in understanding the people, in building relationships. All of these take time. And that's the biggest lesson that I learned in my 6 years at SAP. You know, uh, as an in-house counsel, you're not just there to, do a merger or acquisition. You're not just there to help the company do an IPO. You're not just there to draft some templates or, fight with somebody over a limitation of liability clause.
Mhm,
It's about understanding the product. What is it that the company is selling? What is unique about this product? How come this company has made 10 billion or 50 billion or 100 billion a year by selling this product? What are the things?
mhm,
What are the different components to it? How does this get to the market? How do our sellers sell this product? What is our strategy going forward? What is the innovation that's there in that? These are things that I started learning more in depth, spending more time with, finding more people to hang out with and ask the right questions, because I spent 6 years at SAP. Right? It allowed me to see deals from multiple angles. It allowed me to get into the room with my sales leaders and say, hey, you know what, for this particular customer, maybe you can consider this different model to work with.
mhm,
That's not something me as a young lawyer could ever have thought possible. It was more reactive in my youth, in my younger days, right? Somebody sends an email saying, what do you think of this, which law applies to this? And I would just shoot the reply out saying, hey, here's your answer. That's more reactive. And over time, I've given myself enough ammunition to be a proactive leader in the business rather than just a legal advisor.
mhm. Very good. So being proactive versus reactive is what your mantra has been.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I think that's what businesses value
Mhm,
in their lead lawyers. Of course, they do fully expect us, and it's something that we have to deliver to mitigate risk, to make sure that we're not going to get sued for all our money. But at the same time, we need to help them make money as well. We need to help to drive the business forward, and that is something that I have very consciously worked on during 6 years at SAP, 11 years at NetApp.
mhm. Great. So one of the common misconception uh, about lawyers in general is that lawyers are expensive and it's a cost to the company. And your whole life you have been part of the tech world. If you can help us understand, how does Techie perceive lawyers and especially the in-house counsel? Is it a cost center for them or is it a revenue center for them? What's your thought on this?
It's a bit of a trick question, because yes, we don't directly bring revenue to the company. We are not salespeople. We are not
Mhm.
selling product to our customers. At the same time, I cannot describe the legal department as purely a cost center. It's not like the company is throwing money at us and it's disappearing down the drain. We are not just fancy people in suits sitting, in cabins. But where we do add value is in two places. One is in helping the business understand and calibrate its innovation strategy.
Mhm.
The second is in mitigating business and contractual risk, right? And that is worth millions of dollars on its own. And quite interestingly, when I was in SAP, that being a software product company, license audits used to be a big deal, where, uh, you know, uh, some of our customers would have bought X number of licenses, and then they are actually using a much higher number. And then we can send them a legal notice. So I've been on those discussions where that's actually resulted in revenue for the company. So, I kept joking to, our sales head in India, saying, "Hey, I need a commission too, because I've got you so many millions of business." But, there are a number of ways in which, just like this one, there are a number of ways in which, lawyers can contribute to the organization. Most of it is not direct revenue impact, where we are selling a product and getting money for it. It's mostly in terms of, A, how are we protecting the company against risk, and that risk itself would have a pretty large dollar number to it. And the second thing is, how are we helping the company shape its policies, shape its products, shape its strategy, innovations for the future, being ready for the markets that are going to develop in the next 3 to 5 years.
Mm. Can you share a bit more about what role an in-house counsel can play in shaping the innovation strategy?
Uh, so, you know, first thing is that, we are a strategic enabler of durable advantage. That's a quote that I had written down to myself, which
Okay.
our chief IP officer had said. Our head of the IP legal team. So, are we protecting innovations that matter the most? Are
Mm.
we structuring partnerships and contracts to reinforce long-term lock-in? And are we anticipating regulatory trends that could weaken or strengthen our moat? These are three questions which she had asked once.
Okay.
And, I think this is where lawyers step into, the room consisting of engineers and inventors, right? Uh, you know, these are people who have great ideas. These are people who are innovating. These are people coming up with new products. But there are two guardrails. One is the innovation something that is relevant to the business? Is it pushing forward our big bets? Is it pushing forward our business strategy? And the second thing is, are we able to afford it the right kind of legal protection? Number one. Number two, by protecting those assets, are we moving the business forward? Right? And again, there are different ways in which we can, lawyers can assign certain kinds of defensibility to our innovation and IP. That the obvious ones are through patents, trade secrets, confidentiality agreements. So, what is it that you want to disclose and prevent your competitors from accessing? That's your patent strategy. What do you want to keep confidential and as a trade secret and prevent others from accessing that information? That's part of your trade secret thing. And then there are things which you disclose in order to get certifications, in order to get certain licenses, in order to get certain, branding to your product itself. All of these, the business has an idea, but as lawyers, we can step into the room and we can help people understand that. We can help people understand what are the different protections available, how these matter, how these can be captured as part of our internal policy, our outside looking policies, our contracts, the processes which lead to innovations. How are we hiring and retaining the right talent for innovations? What can I as a lawyer do to facilitate that? What clauses can I add in there? What kind of incentives are okay to give them? These are things that I can discuss with people. And again, this is a cross-functional, a strategy that needs to be done. It's not like there's an engineer, there's a chief product officer sitting somewhere and thinking, oh, this is a great idea, let's just work on it. Or there's a CEO sitting there and saying, how do I make my next $5 billion? Or there's a lawyer sitting there thinking, which is my next litigation? All of these people come together. There's also somebody from finance, somebody from HR who needs to be a part of this, because where are the investments coming from? Are we putting money in the right place? Where is our return of investment coming from? Where's our best talent at? So when these brains get together, and even if one spoke in the wheel is missing, the vehicle is not going to move.
Correct. Hmm. So, would it be fair to say that ignoring innovation protection could be a disastrous thing for a tech company?
Absolutely. I mean, completely ignoring any form of protection is disastrous. That's almost an axiomatic statement, right? And the only reason we are able to command premium prices for our products, and that's not just us, it's anybody in the tech space,
Yeah.
anybody in the pharmaceutical space, right? The only reason you are able to command a premium for your product is because there are certain legal protections. There is a barrier to entry for your competitors, and if you are the sole supplier of something in a particular manner, so you can take advantage of that in a legal and business perspective. That's what matters. And it need not always be in the form of a patent, like I just said. Sometimes there are things like algorithms, and in this newly emerging world of AI, some of these things can probably never be patented. But what can be patented, you have to. What should remain as part of your trade secrets, what should remain as part of your confidential strategies.
Mm.
That's what gives you a lot of edge. And tech moves so quickly that if you're reducing the barriers to entry for your competitors, that's when you've lost the race.
Mm. True, true. Now, with this emergence of AI, there are two school of thoughts which are going on. One is people are skeptic because all the patents which are getting filed, they will be published, and once it is published, and someone wants to, let's say, copy your tech, they will just build a tool to read all the your patent applications and basically figure out how the tech is built and make a copy of it, circumvent all your ideas and launch their product. So one school of thought is saying because AI is evolving at a rapid pace, let's not file patents. Otherwise, these patents would then be used by AI in the future and our product would get copied in the future. Another school of thought is saying, do not worry about it. Let's continue and, in fact, accelerate filing protection so that we can build a very strong moat around our technology itself. So
Mhm.
that tomorrow, if somebody wants to file, they'll have to do workaround. Now, with these two school of thoughts existing right now, and with so much anxiety, stress around people, what is your strategy, Anirudh, today with all these AI innovation? Do you suggest filing for patents, or you suggest don't file for an app for a patent?
Again, it goes back to the question of what are you filing a patent for? What are you not filing for? What are you keeping as a secret? There are certain kinds of underlying, uh, how do I use a non-technical term here? There is a product on top, and then there is
Yep.
code beneath it, and then there are various logical streams which flow into that code and which flow into the entire structure of the product. So you identify the parts of the code, or the different the components of your product,
Yeah.
which could give you an advantage, which could make it exclusive. And most important thing that we need to remember here is customer buy-in, right? If we are able to tie down a customer, not by force or not by putting a cage around them, but by making our product some sort of a reference architecture, right? We are using it as the gold standard for our customers to build their entire AI strategy around. Then that's where I would step in and say this is something that requires legal protection, right?
Mm.
If it is just purely transactional, I'm saying this is part of your tech infrastructure. I'm giving you this product, and you give me some money for it. Yes, it does make me money, but it's not giving me a foothold in the long term story. It's not giving me a foothold in the strategic story, right? If I can get into their strategic workloads, if I can make my customers drive their entire AI workloads through my products, or a significant portion of it through my products, if I can get references, if I can make it a reference architecture for regulated environments like banks, like healthcare institutions, or the government, if I can give them a platform which is already compliant with things like data sovereignty, with the cyber security initiatives, all of these are part of an organization's AI strategy, so to speak. So if my product can deliver all of this, then I sit down and break up what needs to be patented, right? What needs to be a part of my algorithm or trade secret process.
Mhm.
So that's the advice that I have been providing, that I do provide to our leadership. It's not that there is an isolated piece of innovation and you're making a decision about it, whether it needs to be patented, whether it does not need to be patented, whether it needs to be disclosed, whether needs to be a part of a certification process. You don't take an isolated innovation, you don't take an isolated piece of code and do that. You see where it fits into the puzzle.
Right. Okay. That's a good advice. Basically, it's actually the whole innovation strategy a tech company can adopt. I mean, if your client is using what you said is if your client is using your technology to build their workflows around, that means it's a gold standard. You must protect it because this could itself be a scalable model which you can use with all other clients and they will pay for it and they will be dependent on you. Basically, you are making them hooked.
Yeah.
So any technology, any idea, any product, any feature which is making your client hook to you must be protected.
Correct. And those are what we like to call as the moats around us, right?
Yeah.
uh, you know uh,
Mhm.
at the end of it, these are, if you want to use a different expression, these are barriers to entry.
Yeah.
How do you prevent an outsider from getting into your institution or into your office or your castle, right? And the question that I ask myself, if my biggest competitor tries to copy this starting tomorrow,
Mm.
what would actually stop them, right? If my answer to that question is, oh, it's just a matter of time, then my defensibility is already poor,
Mm.
right? If my answer to that question is customer habits, data ecosystem, and integration, then my defensibility is strong, right? Because then I have a customer buy-in. I have a customer who's compounding my advantages, right? I'm building an entire ecosystem. My product should be distributable. I have, strategic partnerships with organizations like, those who provide GPUs, those who can, reduce, who can improve my model training or improve the inference efficiency. Those are key things that people speak about in AI. How do I build partnerships with these people, right? And that's where me, as in my role as a lawyer, I can step in and say, this is the kind of contract we need to be having with
Mm.
this kind of organization. This is the length of time. This is the enterprise feel that we can give to the, whether it's an ecosystem partner,
Right.
whether it's a customer, right? This is how we make them feel important. This is how we tie them down for a long time. What are the support dependencies that we can place on them? In regulated environments, especially when we are talking about large banks, financial institutions, like, those who are regulated by SEBI also, or healthcare institutions, defense, government, for them, the cost of migration is not as important as the risk of migration,
Mhm.
right? So if they want to give up my product and go for somebody else, cost is one factor. But for them, what are the other things? Do I have to build this from scratch? And NetApp, the company that I work for, it's a enterprise data storage provider. And storage is one of the hardest things, or the longest, the turnaround time for replacements. So how do I make sure that, A, I'm better than competitors who are incumbents in accounts? And how do I make sure that once I'm in an account, it's very difficult to get me out of there? And for these, in legal terms, I can build a strategy using our documentation, our contracts, our policies to work with our partners to apply to our customers, and that enables business. If there's a customer who joins today and gives us $5 million, if he stays for another 10 years, he's going to give us maybe a cumulative of $25 million over, or maybe $50 million over that lifetime. And that's how I can help.
Mhm. Nice. So, what does it take to be an in-house lawyer at a Fortune company versus a normal tech company?
There are no normal tech companies. I think every tech company is ambitious. Every tech company is eventually going to scale up. But yeah, just to answer that question, typically smaller organizations or newer organizations, they have the ability to scale very quickly. They have the ability to grow from, say, a 50 million year to a 500 million year in just maybe 3 years.
Mm.
And for that, being a lawyer in that kind of a fast-paced environment, it brings its own set of challenges. The number of people coming in increase, so your policies relating to people need to constantly be looked at. The kind of products and the kind of services or support or whatever that the company is selling, you need to constantly keep thinking of whether your contractual models can accommodate that, whether it's nimble enough to enable the business to move forward at that pace. You think about things like automation. How do I automate my contract management? How do I make my negotiation strategy more efficient? How do I onboard customers and partners faster? These are things that, as a lawyer, you need to think about so much more for a fast growing or a newer organization. Organizations like the one that I'm part of, or anything else in the Fortune 100, Fortune 50, these are organizations that have existed for a long time. They've been through these challenges, but they have a totally different kind of interests to protect. They are the ones who are wary of these smaller players all around trying to bite at their heels. They are wary of losing their small chunks of their business to others. How do they, with their spending power, with their market presence, how do they constantly innovate to block other people from entering certain markets, to use their references, to use their networks, to use their customer base to continue buying from themselves. And your strategy as a lawyer also changes based on that. It's very simplistic to think that I'm a lawyer for a smaller tech company talking to a lawyer of a bigger tech company, so I have absolutely no negotiation leverage. यार माइक्रोसॉफ्ट के साथ नेगोशिएशन है, कुछ नहीं होने वाला है.
Correct.
That's very simplistic to think of it that way. But then it's about understanding what you're in that game for. What is Microsoft doing in that negotiation? What are you doing in that negotiation? It's about trying to use your relative advantages. As a smaller organization, you're more nimble. It doesn't mean you just give in to everything, right?
Yeah.
It means that you can reshape your business, you can pivot very quickly. As a Microsoft or as a Google or as a Meta, probably they can't pivot as quickly as a smaller organization. And I've been on both ends of the table with respect to that. I can reach out to my business and say, can we do this slightly differently? Can we structure this deal differently? It's worked out when I'm the smaller and more nimble organization. And in other cases, the person on the other side of the table, they are moving overnight sometimes. And they say, you know what, we'd like to change this entire engagement. We'd like to do it this way.
Mm. Okay. Mm, interesting. And what is the pressure like? Is that pressure different because the scale of the organization, because of the size of the organization, or because of what is at stake?
Responsibilities remain the same, right? As lawyers, we are expected to protect the company. We are expected to help the company grow. Both of these. Whether I'm growing a 5 billion business to 6 billion, whether I'm growing a 100 million business to 150 million, my responsibilities remain the same. The pressures are the same, right? If the business has to conclude a deal, it has to conclude a deal. If it has to be done tomorrow, it has to be done tomorrow. But of course, the visibility that you get in a larger organization is different from the visibility that you get in a smaller organization. Probably, your desk is right next to the CEOs in a smaller organization. He could just swivel his chair and say, "Arey yaar, kya ho raha hai? Kahan hai?" And that becomes a sort of an implied pressure by itself. At least have layers. For me, the first thing will come on an email, and I can look at that email and think to myself, okay, this looks threatening. I'm
Okay.
not immediately faced by a CEO standing over my desk and saying, "Kaha gaya contract?"
Yeah.
No, that way, yes, but in the larger picture, our responsibilities as lawyers, as advisors to our boards, they remain the same at its core.
Mhm.
Just because you add more zeros to the figure, in terms of the stakes involved, it doesn't make our responsibility any less. I can't give bad advice just because it's $1,000 deal.
Yeah. Of course. Understood. Just because there are more zeros doesn't mean the pressure is any less.
Yeah, and the pressures come in different ways, right? And
Nice.
there was an acquisition happening, at a global level,
Mhm.
and one component of it was in India. This is the beauty of being, a part of a large global organization. There's a component which lands up on your desk, and you're required to give an answer. You look at the entire transaction history; people have been discussing it for the last 6 months, right? And then it comes to you and says, "Tomorrow is the closing date. Can we get an answer by tonight?" What were you doing for the last few months? You can tell me earlier, right?
Yeah.
And but what I wish for isn't always going to be the case. Uh,
Correct.
and if I think about it, if you're a smaller organization, you might be acquiring a company for $100K, not for $1 billion.
All
You
right.
might be acquiring a brand name from someone. And even there, the CEO has, done all his whining and dining with people. And he swings by at 7 p.m. You're just picking up your bag to leave. He swings by and is, यार कल signing हो रहा है.
That's the story common everywhere. No matter what the scale of the operation is, no matter what the scale of the team is, I think mandates getting landing. I mean, mandates landing up at in-house counsel's desk at the last hour is common, no matter the size of the organization.
And I spend a lot of time during our leadership meetings and stuff like that, during our when I have a chance to meet with all the senior sales leaders or the engineering leaders,
Mm.
and I keep telling them, please engage early, please let me know what's happening, please give me things to work on earlier. If you give me 12 hours turnaround time, you're putting me under pressure and you're getting a bad work product out of me. Over time, that has helped,
Okay.
but not to the extent that we would consider to be a logical conclusion.
Mm.
Instead of giving me 12 hours, I probably get 24 hours now, which is a win in itself.
Yeah. No, I understand. So almost all the in-house counsels have expressed the same sentiment.
Yeah, I'm sure it's and if I speak to you who's part of a law firm, you're going to say pretty much the same thing. Yeah, what were you doing all this while? Why did you come to me now?
Yeah, yeah. In fact, that also is one of the reason why the law firms operate on Saturday as well,
Hmm.
because all the business, all the clients, they think of that problem for 4 days until so like Monday to Thursday. They are thinking about it. They'll how to do it. We'll manage it. On Friday, they realize they can't do it themselves. Right. So the first half of the Friday goes in finding out the right person, and by the second half, they reach out to us and send out the case saying that you know what, we are in trouble. We need an answer by Monday. And that's the reason why all the lawyers are working on the Saturdays and Sundays to make sure that they have an answer for their client ready. I think that's the same problem everywhere.
Well, I'll let you in on a secret here. There have been
Yeah.
occasions. I'm not proud of it, but I have done it, where I wait until a Thursday, and I know that I can't deliver it by Friday because I had 100 other things to do. So my strategy is to write an email to the external counsel Well, I'm confused here. Could you help me with an answer? And then when somebody within my organization asks, I've said, I've sent it for external counsel. I'll get back to you when they get back to me.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for acknowledging and accepting the Thursday email out.
Yeah, I mean it's true. I mean, I try
Yeah,
not to do it. And even if I send something on Thursday, I'll say you can get back to me by next Thursday, which is kind of fair. And I tell people please do not work beyond 8 p.m. or on a weekend on any of the work that I've given you. My first boss at Infosys, he said this. When you look at a contract red line, you can see not only the name of the person who's done the redlining, but also the time, the date
yeah.
and time. And if you see comments which are timed as 1 a.m., 12 a.m., you send it straight back and say, I want this done again. Because people are usually at the end of their concentration, their energy, and in the middle of the night at 12 a.m., 1 a.m. And probably you're not getting the best out of them.
Mm, mm.
So even if it is the opposite party who has done those red lines at that time, my boss used to say, please do it again. We want you to give us what you really think about it and not what
Yeah.
your sleepy mind thinks.
Correct, correct. That's a good advice. That's a good advice. Yes, very well. So, Anirudh, tell me one thing. So, there are in last 20 years, I mean, you must have faced so many challenges as well with respect to IP, with respect to timelines, with respect to hourly billings, with respect to many more things, maybe coordination with your external agencies, external law firm partners as well. What are those two, three challenges which you think should be solved in today's day and age?
Hmm.
Things which should not exist, what would those be if you have to highlight those?
Since we are moving into an age of AI and chat GPT and everything being fed to us by a computer,
Hmm.
there are a lot of workloads, there are a lot of processes which have the potential of getting automated. This entire back and forth about billable hours, this entire back and forth about timesheets, a lot of it can be automated. And that's one thing. The second thing is, I think humans let the AI bots do their work 24/7. But as humans, I think we've earned ourselves a proper 50 or 55-hour week, right? And not even going down to a 40-hour week or a 35-hour week, but even 50-hour week is something that we as human lawyers deserve. And I think this is something that organizations across the board can solve, right? It's not just about pushing your people hard just because you're getting extra money. As a law firm, you're getting extra money. Or in an in-house position, there is a perception that if you stay back late in the night, you're going to get a promotion faster. Uh, let's break down those perceptions. Let's break down those long working hours. I know as a 23-year-old I had the courage to think to myself, I don't want to work 80 hours. It does not matter. I'm not getting my youth back. And let me take half the money, but let me live my life. There are not too many people who are in a position to make that decision, right? There are various circumstances, there are various fears, there are insecurities. Not everybody is capable, or not everybody has the circumstances to make that decision. But having spent this much time around, I think this is one thing that we can solve, either by the use of technology or by being a little more empathetic towards how we structure our work and how much work we take on. That's one thing I want to solve.
Very good, impressive. Thank you so much for answering that, Anirudh. And I agree, all these timesheets, billable hours, and everything. I mean, that should just go away. There's no point
Not
in.
always.
Why?
They have a role to play. They provide structure, they provide a framework. It's important. But there is definitely a better way of doing this. And if you're spending so much of money and honestly so much of electricity on powering all those servers and data centers and GPUs and all that, we can solve these small problems.
Hmm. All right, right. And if you were to give one advice to the 23-year-old who was in the shell, at the start of law school, what would that advice be in today's time?
Quite honestly, it would just be, don't be in a hurry, right? Don't be in a hurry to chase titles. Don't be in a hurry to chase, particular kinds of organizations. Uh, don't try to think of yourself as somebody who's greater than the general counsel in the organization. Those were things I was super egoistic about when I started off. Uh, I really, what is this assistant manager? I don't want this. I want to be a senior manager. No, it really doesn't matter because titles come and go. A career is really long. It's the network, it's the relationships, it's the depth that you build, right? It's depth with the business, depth with your peers, depth with your colleagues, with other departments, understanding people, building proper relationships at work.
Mhm.
I think that's something that probably a 23 or a 25-year-old me could have done better. Try to build those relationships that matter.
Wow, this is profound. So the focus is towards building the relationship and not chasing the titles, which I'm sure almost everybody does. I mean,
Yeah, and I did it right.
yeah,
Some would have given me extra 50K a year. I would have run and said, "Yeah, yeah, I'm coming there." And probably in hindsight, it worked in a particular way, but it could have gone completely wrong as well.
yeah, true. Nice. Very, very good. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing such great wisdom, Aniruddha. It never felt like a podcast or never felt like just one way communication. I mean, I enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much for being so open, so honest, and also being open to admit certain things, be it a email on Thursday or even changing titles as well. Uh, I haven't had anyone who has been so honest until now.
Oh, thank you so much. And that's one thing I've realized about being successful: how transparent you can be and how concise you can be. It gets you a lot further than trying to be cool.
Yes, absolutely. I will take.
Likewise, I had a lot of fun. I did not realize that it's an hour already. Uh,
Yes, it is. Awesome. This was a really wonderful. Thank you so much for giving your time to us. And I'm sure people watching this are gonna learn so much and they would be implementing it in their lives and that would just do wonders to them as well. Thanks again for sharing such beautiful insights with all of us.
an absolute pleasure, Prayank, and thank you for providing me with this platform.